Wind came first, slapping the shuttered windows of Gullhaven with wet palms and whistling through the alleyways like a schoolyard bully looking for loose change. Then the tide groaned, heaving its gray flank against the break wall, and the fishermen's bells, supposed to warn of high water, clanged out of rhythm, jangling like teeth in a frightened mouth. That was how the village always knew Ezekiel Lorne had raised his curtain. I had watched the pattern form for 3 consecutive seasons. No matter how limp the flags, no matter how cloudless the horizon, the moment the puppeteers' lanterns were lit inside the weathered playhouse on Dock Street, the sky assembled itself into a bruise. My duties as assistant to the harbor master required nightly logs of wind speed and barometric pressure, so I kept a notebook full of numbers and times. The line connecting Lorne's performances to the storms was so obvious it felt like a child's drawing of lightning, but nobody wanted proof. They wanted distraction, and for 4 copper coins, Lorne's marionettes served it up. Tragedy, nostalgia, a strange salt-sting sweetness. The first time I paid admission, curiosity dragged me in. By the third, it was something less voluntary. The door creaked like timbers under strain as I stepped into his candlelit cavern. Black curtains hung thick with the smell of brine. The audience laughed in small, apologetic bursts, soldiers shuffling dice in their pockets, widows with the veils twitching beneath their chins. Above them, dangling from iron gantries, waited the puppets, a court of kings, beggars, mermaids, and drowned men, all carved from bleached driftwood, streaked with serpent-green moss. No 2 pieces looked alike. One marionette's face bore a split down its brow as if an axe had cleaved it mid-heartbeat. Another had a torso webbed with tar lines that resembled old scars. A hush trembled through the room whenever those carved eyes glinted. I felt it too, a vibration inside my ribs, as though the strings trembled through my own bones. Lorne emerged only after the silence was complete. He wore black sleeves rolled to the elbow, exposing forearms latticed with tattoos of sextants and sea serpents. His hair fell in iron-gray ropes, and his mouth looked chiseled, slightly off-center, as though fixed in half-apology. Some said he had once been a shipwright, others a mutinous helmsman. All agreed he'd come to Gullhaven floating on a tide of debris after a hurricane 3 years past. He never confirmed or denied the gossip. He only bowed, climbed the narrow ladder to the bridge above the stage, and looped the rigging of fine silver wire around his fingers. What followed on that particular night was The Ballad of the Black Constellation, a story about sailors lost beneath an eclipsed moon. As wooden figures danced, the theater groaned, each gust outside striking boards like battering rams. Rain speared gaps in the roof, yet the audience leaned forward, mesmerized. Every word of the narrator voiced in a sonorous baritone that surely belonged to no living man, tasted of tideweed and rust. 2 marionettes enacted a duel atop a rolling mast. The applause, when they reconciled and embraced, sounded half-hearted, as if the crowd feared to break the spell. At the climactic moment, a sailor slipping beneath black water. The puppet's head lolled back and released a low moan that did not come from any hidden pipe or gramophone. It sounded deep, subterranean, older than iron. Children whimpered while adults pinched their own arms, unsure whether they'd heard it or only remembered hearing it. I wrote one line in my logbook that night. The sea answers his strings. The next morning, beachcombers found 18 gulls dead in a perfect ring upon the sand. Their feathers were unruffled, their eyes wide, as though some unseen hand had plucked the breath from their throats and left the rest untouched. Ezekiel Lorne's theater, according to the carpenter hired to mend the roof, was littered with small puddles, each reflecting the rafters like dark mirrors. Yet he swore no tile was missing, no beam unsealed. Water had seeped in through the wood itself. Rumors thickened, but I wanted more than rumor. So, on the evening of the equinox, when the puppeteer rowed his skiff along the tide line to harvest driftwood, I followed. Moonlight drew a silver comb through the sea's black curls. Lorne's lantern bobbed ahead of me. He picked up each piece of driftwood the waves surrendered, cradling them against his chest, sometimes pressing his ear to the grain as if listening. I hid behind dunes until his lantern paused at a twisted length of cedars scarred by char. He brushed sand away, and then he spoke, not to me, but to the wood. "Your name," he whispered. The sea hissed. He closed his eyes. "Ronan Pike," he said aloud, voice cracking. "Quartermaster, Brigantine Dawnwolf." My throat went dry. He was answering himself. "Longitude 52 west, foundered during squall at 9 bells. He touched the timber as gently as a priest blessing an infant. Something in the night air bent. A kind of tremor that set my teeth on edge. I stepped backward, and a shell cracked under my boot. Lorne's head snapped up. "Show yourself." His gaze found me with disconcerting ease, as if seeing past the dark. I considered flight, but curiosity snared me. So I straightened and walked down the slope of sand. "I keep the weather logs," I said. Mira Adler. His eyes reflected the lantern's flame like twin coins. "And you've come for confirmation, for understanding." He sighed, a breath that smelt faintly of kelp. "Then see." He held out the chunk of cedar. "Put your ear to it." I hesitated only long enough to feel foolish, a grown woman listening to Driftwood. The moment my cheek touched the grain, cold needle pricks traced my scalp. A storm roared in the hollows of the wood thunder. Men shouting commands, sails ripping. Someone sang a fragment of shanty, voice bubbling as if filled with brine. The moment lasted only a second, but left me gasping. He took the cedar back, cradling it. "Memories cling to what the sea keeps. The wood is porous. It drinks death like ale." "And you carve it?" I said, voice shaking. "I release it," he corrected quietly. We stood while tide water foamed around our boots. At last he loaded his bundle into the skiff. "Come to the workshop," he said. "Storm or no storm, it's better to witness the truth at its core than fear it in the dark." I followed again, this time invited. His workshop was an old boathouse moored on half-rotted pylons. Inside, candles floated in bowls of oil, their light warping across walls hung with tools, rasps, awls, tiny knives. The air shimmered with sawdust and salt. Blocks of driftwood lay on trestles, some still wet enough to glisten. He set the cedar on a bench and selected a blade honed to a surgeon's glimmer. With every stroke, brackish water bled from the fibers and dripped into a copper pan belted to the bench's edge. The water emitted a low, swelling hum. Lorne listened. So did I, numb with fascination. "Every drowned man dreams he is unfinished," he said. He repeats last thought, last fear, last plea. I carve that fragment into form, give it shape and voice. The marionette tells the story aloud, and the sea at last hears it. "And the storms?" I asked. "Weather is the grammar of the sea's grief. Each confession stirs wind and wave. Until the telling is done, the gale remains." He paused, wiping sweat. "It should calm when the curtain falls. Lately, it doesn't." Perhaps he expected condemnation. I felt instead a searching tenderness. He was midwife to ghosts, but could not soothe them into silence. "Why continue?" I said. "Because they find me," he replied, as if a compass of sorrow was set in their bones. The copper pan overflowed. Seawater sizzled on the lamp beside it. From its steam rose a smell of storm-racked decks. Tar, hemp, struck iron. He worked until dawn, the beginnings of a puppet's face emerging beneath his knife. I recognized resignation in its downturned lips. When birds began to cry outside, he let the wood rest, and I walked home, the sun a watery coin behind cloud banks. For the first dawn in weeks, the sea lay glassy, windless, as though exhausted. Over the next month, I returned to the boathouse regularly. He entrusted small tasks to me, sanding joints, brushing linseed into cracks. I felt like an accomplice, and maybe I was. When Lorne spoke of the dead, he used first names: Oscar, Leonie, Faro Jack. Each driftwood body, once strung, hung beside its kin until performance night. Gullhaven soon noticed my absence from taverns and card tables. Rumors hatched. Mira was the puppeteer's lover, apprentice, or hostage. None guessed the truth. I was translator for a chorus of drowned men. Then came Midsummer's Eve, when the mayor insisted on a grand performance to coincide with fireworks and the clamming fair. The harbor was packed with visiting sloops. Children traced names on fogged glass. Skippers drank spiced rum in the square. I shimmered with heat mirages. No one wanted a storm, yet everyone wanted the show. "Can you refuse?" I asked Lorne that morning. His hands trembled over breakfast tea. "There is one tale left," he said. "It's the strongest. I carved it from keelwood, still slick with blood." "Whose memory?" He stared beyond the window, toward the lighthouse perched on its stony outcrop. "My own." I hadn't known he had ever drowned. He told it then, how he captained the brig Horizon's Mercy, smuggling medicine through wartime blockades. How, in a hurricane of almost biblical wrath, he ordered crew to jettison crates to lighten ship. Thunder drowned protests. One crate held the surgeon's daughter, smuggled away from plague. She was tossed by mistake or panic into the black churn. Lorne dove after her, reaching her fingertips before a spar crushed his skull. He woke 2 days later on Flotsam. Alive, she was gone. So were 12 of his men. The sea, he said, kept their memories, and some of his, and threw them back upon the beach alongside him. "Ever since," he murmured, "I've felt them inside each wave. They want their story told. They want to know why I lived." I covered his scarred hands with mine. "Then let's tell it," I said, though fear gnawed my voice, "but let's tell it fully." Night fell like velvet dipped in ink. The theater groaned under triple crowds. People stood in aisles, sat on laps, pressed faces to cracks in the walls. Outside, gulls wheeled in uncanny silence. Behind the curtain, Lorne tuned his silver wires. He had built a new marionette, a captain in a dark coat, its chest carved open to reveal a tiny music box where a heart should be. Single key protruded. He wound it once, twice, then stopped. "If the storm worsens," he said, "cut the main line." He gestured to a black cord tethered to the curtain winch. "Collapse the stage. Bury the confession before it drowns the town." I nodded, palms sweaty. He stepped onto the bridge. The curtain rose. The play began as lullaby. Sailors hoisting canvas under star-streaked sky, voices weaving shanty, stage lights flickering like lanterns. The crowd sighed, charmed. Outside, a breeze ruffled banners. Scene 2. The girl discovered stowed amid crates, her laughter a bell. Wooden sailors danced with her in a ring. A young boy in the audience whispered, "She's real." I thought so too. Lorne manipulated her so delicately she seemed breathing. The breeze became wind. Flags snapped. Scene 3. Black clouds blooming. Drums boomed, imitation thunder, but the audience soon heard the real answer overhead. Rain hammered the roof. Lightning peeled cloth-like across the sky, yet no one fled. On stage, the captain ordered the crew to jettison cargo. Tiny sailors obeyed, heaving crates over a painted rail. The girl marionette clung to the captain. When a crash of thunder shook the theater, the girl's string snapped. Whether by design or accident, I couldn't tell, and she tumbled into the orchestra pit, vanishing from view. Gasps rose. The captain dove. Lorne's fingers flew, tangling wires so the puppet's limbs spiraled downward. From speakers hidden in eaves rose a terrible roar, except again, there were no speakers. That sound came from everywhere at once. The ocean outside the walls, the water inside our blood. Rain found a loose shingle and spilled through, pattering onto velvet seats. Women raised shawls. Men blinked spray from eyelashes. Famine performance dissolved boundary. A boom like mountains colliding reverberated. Lanterns flickered, died, and the only light remained the stage, which glowed with cold phosphor. I saw now the captain's puppet face weeping splinters. Lorne's hands were bleeding, slivers embedded like quills. He did not falter. The story had no script. It unfolded raw, seamless, as memory itself. "I ordered them to live," he shouted, not to the audience, but through the puppet. The marionette echoed, voice doubled, trebled, as though a dozen drowned sailors spoke at once. "I tried to save her." Wind slammed doors open. Salt spray rolled across planks. He turned the key in the puppet's chest. A lullaby chimed, notes cracked, waterlogged. Over that brittle tune, Lorne murmured, "I lived because guilt is ballast." The stage lights flared blue. Lightning struck the weather vane. Sparks cascaded. Someone screamed for evacuation. I rushed to the winch, hand on the black cord. Collapse the stage. But I paused. Could bricks and timbers really smother the sea's grief? Would it not simply rise elsewhere, stronger? The story had to finish. On stage, the captain found the girl floating, eyes closed. He clutched her. The music box slowed. The puppeteer's voice sounded scraped raw. "Forgive me." The girl's head lifted slightly, not by strings. They were severed. It lifted of its own accord. Her wooden mouth parted, and water poured out, glittering in stage light. Gullhaven's roof rumbled. Tiles pried loose like coins flicked from a miser's palm. Rain sheeted down. Yet I saw in the audience's faces something luminous. Rapt attention, tears mingling with seawater. They needed this confession as much as the dead did. The girl's puppet pressed its palm to the captain's chest, over the music box. The tune faltered, rewound. Then she rested her head against him. Lorne's fingers let the wires slacken, and both marionettes drifted to the boards, still embraced. Silence. A wisp of air moved through the theater, gentle, after that violence. The rain outside lessened to a patter. I exhaled a breath I'd been holding. The audience rose in a tidal wave of applause, not jubilant, but solemn, like prayer. Some kissed crucifixes or traced runes on their sleeves. I looked up at Lorne. He was shaking, lips blue, but alive. He met my gaze with haunted relief. Minutes later, we emerged onto Dock Street. Stars peered through ragged clouds. Puddles mirrored lanterns calm as coins on midnight cloth. The townspeople dispersed quietly, mindful as guests leaving a funeral. Lorne and I returned to the boathouse to hang the marionettes. He wiped blood from his hands and said, "They're quiet." I listened. No distant moans, only gulls sleeping. "Will they stay that way?" "For a time," he said. A weariness deeper than age hollowed his cheeks. "The sea forgets, then remembers. When it remembers, it will send more wood." "Then we'll answer," I said. He frowned softly. "You would stay?" "Yes," I replied, surprising myself with the certainty. "If the sea must speak, someone should listen." He gave a thin smile. "The work will cost you peace." I glanced toward the door, where night air smelled of ozone and renewal. "Peace is overrated," I said, "but understanding is an anchor," he finished. We set about cleaning the stage, mopping seawater that, to my amazement, evaporated faster than ordinary water, leaving salt lace on the boards. At dawn, we walked to the shore. The sea lay flat as hammered silver. Driftwood pieces surfaced here and there, bobbing quiet as seals, waiting. I bent to pick one up. It was small, palm-sized, smooth as bone. No voice stirred within it yet. It was merely wood. But sooner or later, it would drink enough of someone's restless dream, and we would carve. I looked at Lorne, and he at me. Above us, gulls circled, feathers luminous in newborn light. Whatever storms might come, they would not be accidents anymore. They would be stories answered. Grief spoken to, spare those still living the burden of unsaid words. Together we walked back toward the silent village, carrying the future and fragments of the past, ready, when the next curtain rose, to let the sea speak and, at last, to listen.